They called my husband garage trash in front of 120 wedding guests, and they were proud of it. I stood there, frozen in my wedding dress, barely able to smile as my mother-in-law held her champagne glass high and loudly asked, "So, Isabella, when will Leo start doing something real with his life? Or are you two planning to live off your teacher salary forever?" My name is Isabella Hart. I'm a 30-year-old elementary school teacher in Seattle. I've always believed in kindness, hard work, and loving people for who they are, not what they have. But on the day of my wedding, I learned just how cruel people can be when their pride and social status are threatened. I met Leo Martin 3 years ago on the sidewalk outside my school. One of the heating units had broken, and he was part of the maintenance team that came to fix it. He wore overalls, had grease on his hands, and yet spoke to me like no one ever had before, with warmth, curiosity, and sincerity. I offered him coffee during his break. He asked what book I was reading. That was the beginning of everything. Leo is calm, kind, and fiercely loyal. He works as a factory line technician in a manufacturing plant on the edge of town, and I loved him for exactly that. He never pretended to be someone else. He respected what I did, supported my goals, and never once cared that I didn't come from money or power. But his family did. The Hillmans. Leo was adopted into the Hillman family at the age of 7. His adoptive mother, Patricia Hillman, runs the HR division of Hillman Manufacturing. His older sister, Clarice, is their brand and marketing head, and their father, who passed away years ago, was the founder of the business. So to them, image is everything. When I first met them, they smiled, offered hugs, and complimented my modest style. But it didn't take long for the judgment to bleed through. At our engagement dinner, Clarice whispered, "You could have aimed higher, you know. With your looks, a junior executive at least." I laughed it off. Leo apologized for them. I told myself it wasn't worth ruining the moment. But it got worse. They refused to help with the wedding unless it was held at their private estate. "It reflects our family's reputation," Patricia insisted. They took over every detail, from the guest list to the floral arrangements. I barely recognized the wedding I had once dreamed about. Still, I went through with it because I loved Leo. I thought, once they saw how happy we were, they would change. I was wrong. At the reception, Patricia gave a speech that started with backhanded compliments and quickly turned into full-blown humiliation. "Some girls marry for love," she said, pausing for dramatic effect. "Others, well, they settle." The guests laughed, some nervously, others cruelly. My cheeks burned. Leo held my hand tighter, his jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Then Clarice stood up in her glittering silver gown and added, "But who knows? Maybe one day Leo will get promoted to janitor." Her husband chuckled beside her. "Or marry into someone useful." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. This wasn't just rudeness. It was targeted, vicious mockery in front of everyone we knew. But it wasn't over yet. As the laughter faded, a calm voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me," said a woman from the corner of the hall. All eyes turned to her. It was Leo's mother, not Patricia. Angela Martin, a short woman in a blue dress with a quiet, dignified presence. She stepped forward and took the microphone from the MC. "I'd like to say a few words as the groom's mother," she began softly, "but also to correct a few misunderstandings." Patricia's smile froze. Clarice narrowed her eyes. Angela looked directly at the Hillmans. "My son works in a factory, yes, but you might want to ask yourselves, which factory? And more importantly, why?" Her words silenced the room. I turned to Leo. He didn't say a word, but there was something in his eyes, something calm, something certain, something that told me everything was about to change. Angela's voice echoed through the hall, and for a moment, you could hear a pin drop. "My son works in a factory, yes, but you might want to ask yourselves, which factory? And more importantly, why?" She didn't say anything more. No grand revelation, No names or details. Just that simple, loaded question, delivered with calm precision. Then she handed the microphone back to the MC, returned to her seat, and sipped her champagne like nothing had happened. I was still trembling. My wedding dress suddenly felt tight around my chest. Leo's hand gently rubbed the back of mine under the table, and I could feel the tension in his fingers. Patricia didn't respond. She forced a smile, but her jaw was stiff. Clarice, on the other hand, leaned in toward her husband and whispered something that made them both chuckle again. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I tried to eat, but my stomach was too knotted. The guests gave us their blessings, some more sincere than others, but no one dared mention the speeches again. Back in our hotel suite that night, I finally turned to Leo. "What did your mom mean?" He was brushing his teeth, but he paused. "You'll find out soon." "That's not an answer, Leo." He walked out of the bathroom and sat next to me on the edge of the bed. "I promise you, Bella, there's a reason for all of this, but I didn't want our marriage to start with me proving something to people who've always judged us. I wanted this day to be about love, about us." I didn't push further. I wanted to trust him, and I did. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. My new in-laws had dragged us through the mud, called Leo trash, mocked our future, treated me like I'd made some tragic mistake by marrying beneath me. And yet, he sat there, calm as ever, like he knew something they didn't, like none of it could hurt him. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Patricia's voice in my head. Settle. That word hurt more than I expected, because deep down, a part of me had believed it too. Maybe not about Leo, but about how they saw me, how little they thought I was worth. The next day, I woke up early and stepped out onto the balcony of our hotel. Seattle's morning mist was rising over the water. Leo joined me with 2 cups of coffee, like he always did. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for everything they said." "You don't need to apologize for them." "I know, but it still hurts." I could see it in your eyes. I stared at the gray sky, then whispered, "Why do they hate me so much?" Leo sighed, "Because you don't play their game, and you're not afraid to live your own life. That scares people like them." That evening, we went to his mother's house for dinner, Angela Martin. I'd always known she wasn't close to the Hillmans, but now it made sense why. Her home was warm, filled with books and handmade crafts. She hugged me like I was her own daughter. Over lasagna and wine, I asked her directly. "Mrs. Martin, what did you mean at the wedding?" Angela smiled and folded her napkin gently. "Leo didn't want to tell you yet, but I think you deserve to know." She stood, walked over to a cabinet, and pulled out a file folder. Inside was a company report, stamped in bold letters. Martin Industrial Holdings, shareholder breakdown. I blinked. "I don't understand." Angela looked at me, calm and steady. "Our family owns 42% of Hillman Manufacturing. Quietly, for years. My late husband built up that stake through silent acquisitions after his own business was absorbed into theirs. He did it to ensure Leo would always have a place, no matter how the Hillmans treated him." I sat back in shock. "You mean?" Angela nodded. "If Patricia thinks she's the queen of that factory, she's in for a surprise. Leo is stepping into his father's role this year." Leo cleared his throat beside me. I turned to him. "So, you're not just a factory worker?" "I am," he said gently, "but I'm also about to become their boss." My breath caught. That wasn't just revenge. It was poetic justice. And tomorrow, he planned to show them everything. I didn't sleep that night. Leo's words echoed in my mind. I'm also about to become their boss. I kept imagining Patricia's smug face melting into disbelief, Clarice choking on her own laughter. But more than that, I kept thinking about how calm Leo had been through it all. He let them humiliate him in front of everyone, just so he could reveal the truth when it would hit the hardest. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and Leo ironing a navy blue suit. Not his usual work overalls. He looked sharp, confident, completely different. You ready? He asked, smiling. Barely, I admitted. I still don't know how you're going to pull this off. Leo simply said, Trust me. Today, they'll finally see who I really am. At exactly 10 a.m., we pulled into the entrance of the Grand Hillside Hotel, where Patricia and Clarice had checked in the night before. As soon as we walked in, I could already feel the tension. Patricia looked down at Leo's suit and raised an eyebrow. Did you borrow that for the day? Clarice chimed in. Is this the tour of your work site? Will we need boots and gloves? Their laughter grated on my nerves, but Leo didn't react. He simply smiled and said, No need for boots. But try not to be late. We all got into his SUV. Clarice and her husband sat in the back, whispering to each other and smirking. Patricia checked her phone every 10 seconds, clearly bored out of her mind. Then we started heading downtown. The moment we passed the freeway exit to the industrial district, Patricia frowned. You missed the turn. No, Leo replied, eyes on the road. We're going somewhere else today. A few minutes later, he pulled up in front of a gleaming glass skyscraper in the heart of Seattle's financial district. Clarice let out a soft gasp. Wait, this is the headquarters of Martin Industrial Holdings, Leo said flatly. We're here. The confusion on their faces was priceless. Patricia looked genuinely baffled. Why are we here? What could you possibly be doing in this building? Leo opened the door and helped me out first, then motioned for the others to follow. As we entered the sleek marble lobby, the receptionist immediately stood up. Good morning, Mr. Martin. The executive team is waiting in the boardroom, and the media presentation has been prepared. Patricia froze. Mr. Martin? She echoed. The receptionist smiled. Yes, Vice President Leo Martin. I could feel the heat rush to Clarice's face. Her husband stepped back like he'd just touched a live wire. Leo turned to them. I wanted you to see what I really do, since you're all so curious. Security escorted us to the executive elevator, which took us straight to the top floor. Glass walls revealed sweeping views of the city. Everything about this place screamed power, wealth, and control. We entered a massive boardroom where staff were already gathered. A man in his 60s stood up at the head of the table and extended a hand. Welcome, Leo. And I assume these are the guests you mentioned? Leo shook his hand. Thanks, Mr. Carter. Give us 5 minutes. Leo turned to Patricia. You asked what I do. I help run this company. And starting next quarter, I'll be promoted to CEO. We own 42% of Hillman Manufacturing, Clarice gasped. Wait, what do you mean, own? Leo didn't blink. Your father sold off large blocks of shares over the years. Quietly. My father bought them. And now, I control them. Patricia's voice trembled. That's not possible. You're lying. Leo reached into his briefcase, pulled out a document, and placed it in front of her. Her face drained of color as she scanned the page. No, this gives you voting control. Correct, Leo said, calm as ever. Which means I can replace the board, including you. Clarice stepped forward, her voice rising. You can't do this. We're family. Leo met her eyes. You should have remembered that at the wedding. I stood there, watching the entire room spin on its axis. The same people who had mocked him like he was dirt were now completely under his control. And then Leo dropped the final bomb. Oh, and one more thing, he said, turning to Clarice and her husband. Starting next month, your team will report directly to me, and your salaries are being reviewed. Clarice's mouth fell open. Her husband stuttered, Reviewed? Leo nodded. Let's just say, I reward performance. Not attitudes. I don't think I'll ever forget the look on their faces. They came in laughing. They left barely breathing. After Leo revealed the truth at Martin Industrial Holdings, his role, the ownership, and the control he had over Hillman Manufacturing, Patricia and Clarice were too stunned to speak. But I wasn't. I was boiling. They humiliated us. They mocked my husband, my wedding, like we were nothing. And all this time, Leo had held the real power in his hands. He just hadn't used it. Until now. But that day was only the beginning. The real revenge started the following Monday. It began with a formal company-wide email from Martin Holdings. Effective immediately, all divisions of Hillman Manufacturing will report directly to our Seattle corporate office. Leadership restructuring is underway. All department heads must reapply for their positions. Clarice called Leo's office 8 times that morning. He didn't answer. Patricia showed up at the front desk, demanding a private meeting. Security turned her away. The next day, Clarice received a new meeting request, an internal evaluation panel. I watched her walk into the office building in her sky-high heels and tailored suit, head held high, still pretending she was untouchable. She wasn't. I'll never forget that panel. Leo sat at the head of the long conference table. On one side were HR, 2 directors from Martin Holdings, and a legal advisor. On the other side sat Clarice, visibly trying to hold herself together. Her husband stood in the hallway, pacing. "I built that brand division," she started. "I know this company better than anyone here. There's no one more qualified." Leo didn't flinch. He leaned forward, calm and cold. "You built a brand based on exclusion, intimidation, and vanity. You've burned partnerships, alienated staff, and made decisions based on ego, not results." Clarice's voice cracked. "That's not fair. You're doing this because of the wedding, because of what I said." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Number, I'm doing this because you're bad for business." The room was silent. Then Leo added, "And since you brought up the wedding, did you really think no one noticed the comments you made? Or the way you treated Isabella?" Clarice's mouth opened, but no words came out. The final decision? Terminated. Effective immediately. Clarice stormed out of the room, her heels clicking like gunshots against the marble floor. Her husband followed in silence. I didn't say a word. I just watched her go. But Patricia, she was another story. 3 days later, Leo met her in the executive lounge for what would become her final conversation as a board member. She came in wearing pearls and pride, pretending nothing had changed. "You've made your point, Leo," she said, sipping her tea. "But you'll need my connections, my experience. The board still respects me." Leo placed a single document in front of her, a copy of the vote of no confidence, signed by every remaining board member. "I don't need your permission," he said. "You've been officially removed from all leadership roles." Patricia stared at the paper, then at Leo. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Why are you doing this? After everything I gave your father? After everything I gave you?" Leo didn't blink. "You gave me nothing but shame. I built this respect on my own. You made me feel like an outsider in my own family. And now, I'm building a better one, with Isabella." Patricia's face crumpled. She didn't cry, but the defeat in her eyes was louder than any tear. The story spread through Seattle's business circle like wildfire. Clarice had lost her title. Patricia had lost her influence. And Leo, my Leo, was now one of the youngest CEOs in the city. But here's the twist that no one saw coming. That same week, during a quiet dinner at home, Leo handed me a black envelope. I opened it, confused. Inside was a notarized document, signed by Leo and his father before he passed. It transferred 10% ownership of Martin Holdings to me. "Wait, what is this?" I whispered. Leo looked at me, eyes filled with pride. "I always knew you'd be underestimated, just like me. But now, you're more than my wife. You're my equal, my partner. You're part of everything I build, forever." I was speechless. Patricia had mocked me for being just a teacher. Now I owned more of the company than she ever had. You'd think after losing their titles, Clarice and Patricia would back off, that they'd learn something. But no, people like them don't go quietly. 2 weeks after Patricia was officially removed from the board, she tried to launch a smear campaign. Anonymous blog posts started appearing, claiming Leo had manipulated his way into power, that I had married for money, and that Martin Holdings had lost its moral core. At first, we ignored it. But then, one of the articles used confidential financial projections, documents only board members had access to. Leo acted quickly. He hired a private digital forensics firm. Within days, they traced the leaks back to an encrypted email, sent from Patricia's personal account. It wasn't just petty sabotage. It was corporate espionage. Leo didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. And this time, I stood right beside him. We handed everything to the legal department. When the lawsuit was filed, Martin Holdings versus Patricia Hillman, it made headlines across Seattle's business journals. Patricia, once the darling of the manufacturing world, now faced serious charges for breaching fiduciary duties and misusing internal company data. Clarice tried to distance herself, but it was too late. Her name was all over the communication trail. She had coordinated the release of the articles, sent drafts to media contacts, even edited one headline that called me a gold-digging teacher. It was all documented. I wish I could say I felt bad, that I took no pleasure in seeing them fall apart. But I did, because this wasn't just revenge. It was the consequence of years of cruelty, lies, and pride. In court, Patricia showed up with a full legal team and tried to present herself as a concerned former executive. But the evidence was overwhelming. The judge didn't even let the case drag. Within 3 sessions, she ruled in favor of Martin Holdings. Patricia was fined heavily, permanently barred from holding board positions in affiliated companies, and forced to issue a public apology. Clarice's fate was even more poetic. A major marketing firm she had lined up for a VP role rescinded their offer, citing ethical concerns. She tried to land work elsewhere, but in a city like Seattle, reputations move faster than resumes. And just like that, the 2 women who once laughed at our wedding now had nothing left to laugh about. As for us, Leo's transition to CEO was announced publicly. For the first time, the press told his story, not the one Patricia tried to spin. A young man who started from the factory floor, built his way up, and led with quiet strength. The headlines changed, and so did the respect. I continued teaching, but now I also led Martin Foundation for Education, a nonprofit we built together, funded by the 10% share Leo gave me. We provided books, laptops, and scholarships for kids in underserved schools, including the very same district where I first met Leo. One afternoon, I stood in front of a crowd at our new learning center, cutting the ribbon with Leo and a group of smiling kids. A reporter approached me and asked, "How did it all begin?" I smiled, with a broken heater, and a man everyone underestimated. But here's the real ending. A month later, we received a wedding invitation. It was from Leo's distant cousin, an artist from California. We weren't planning to attend, but the location caught my eye. It was being held at the Hillman estate. Apparently, Patricia was renting it out to keep up with mortgage payments. I didn't laugh. I didn't feel pity either, because this wasn't just a fall from grace. It was a reminder. When you build your life on power, status, and cruelty, eventually, it all comes crashing down. But when you build it on truth, loyalty, and love, nothing can shake it. Comment the number 1 if you wanted to see how Patricia's story ends, or if you just love seeing karma do its job. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, because trust me, I've got plenty.